Namaste. This is Yoga Therapy Podcast, and I'm your host, Shira Cohen, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness educator. In these conversations with experts in the field of yoga therapy, you'll find out what it is and how it can help you and your loved ones to reclaim well-being. We'll touch on physical as well as mental health, physiology, emotions, women's health, spiritual well-being, goddesses, and self-development in the fullest sense. Listening to another story can change ours, so thank you for showing up, and let's begin this journey together. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for being here, and today we have wonderful Laura Staton. She is a certified yoga therapist and occupational therapist and yoga teacher, I imagine. Right?
Yes. And it's Staton. I'm sorry. I should have said.
That's all right. So please, Laura, tell us your story, how you got to yoga, how yoga became yoga therapy, and how you're merging occupational therapy with that, and maybe for our audience, what is occupational therapy?
Okay. So stop me if I am boring or talk for
Don't worry, just go for it.
I came to New York to study modern dance, and so I went to college and I became a dancer, and I had a dance and choreography career, which was really fun, and blah blah blah. And then when I left college, I ended up studying at Juilliard, which was a very kind of traumatizing hard school to study at for me. It wasn't like bells and whistles and roses and flowers or anything. I'm glad I went.
Very strict?
Very strict, and it was kind of like a little old-fashioned. It was in the 80s, and so, the teachers were a little... wasn't like
fame?
Cuddly. Yeah, a little. I think now it's a little warmer and more cuddly. So
Okay.
a little more student focused. But anyway, I think the part of that is helping that I'm mentioning it for is because when I left, I didn't want to take dance classes anymore. It was like I needed a break from dancing. Also with choreography, I wanted to explore my own movement, my own body a little bit. And so I was like, I have to detox from this situation. And what helped me do what I did for that was I found yoga. And I started at Jivamukti when Sharon and David still had that one studio on 2nd Avenue. And it was, I don't know, maybe 1990 or 91 or something. And I just felt like yoga was so freeing for me, because I didn't have to watch myself. I could sort of self-observe from the inside and not the outside, which is kind of what's so hard about dancing in some ways is you really literally put yourself out there. And I just was so happy I didn't have to be seen. And so that it just was immediately such a healing practice for me, and a physical practice because my body got stronger. And so I just did that. So yoga got incorporated into my sort of adult professional life extremely early on. So by the time 10 years later, I was still doing yoga and I had a baby, I ended up with my friend Sarah Perrin, who was also a new mother, writing Baby Om, Yoga for Mothers and Babies.
You've written another book.
Yeah, this is actually my second book. And really what always interested me about yoga, I think, was not just the physical aspect of it, but the therapeutic aspect of it. So if I was stressed out, or if I was, just couldn't relax, too busy, blah, 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 when you're younger, I was able, or upset or angry, I was able to sort of self-regulate through yoga in a way that even talk therapy I couldn't.
Yeah.
So there was a real mind-body sort of bringing together, like homeostasis. I was able to really self-regulate with yoga. And so then when I had a baby, I was like, well, everyone should you really have to self-regulate when you have a baby because it's
anyway,
so,
yeah.
Right,
yeah.
anyway.
Life.
I really ended up, the perspective, we didn't know it at the time, was really very sort of therapeutic. And although it was about mommy and baby yoga, it was really like how to help the mother find some space in her body and share it with the baby and have a shared experience. And then after that really cool experience where we did that for a while, Sarah ended up going and becoming certified in Iyengar yoga, and I ended up going to OT school, which is kind of interesting. So it's sort of like two different branches.
Yeah.
And I went to OT school because we would see a lot of babies teaching mommy and baby yoga that weren't necessarily typically developing. And so if you have a baby that is not reaching its milestones within a few months, maybe not like within a few weeks, but maybe, if they have a baby that's not rolling over and they're 7 months old, that's delayed. So some of our babies and some of our moms would end up in OT.
So can you explain what OT is for listeners?
Yeah, so OT really, so that was my first introduction of OT. So when I went to
you weren't teaching then.
I was teaching yoga, but I wasn't an OT. And so when I went to NYU, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a pediatric OT, and this is really interesting. I'm going to work with babies. And of course, I don't do that at all. But because OT works with people that are like from infancy until, you take your last breath. OT can work through the entire human span because it's very interested in function. And people function differently throughout their lifespan. And I didn't even really understand that until I became an OT, that, there's sort of age appropriate typical development. That's a very broad spectrum, very, very broad spectrum. But you sort of want people to fall within those phases. And you want people to be able to function so they can go out and enjoy their life and participate in their life. So OT is really about addressing dysfunction that keeps people from being able to participate fully in their life. So, I've worked in a locked ward. So it could be psychosocial, it could be people with mood disorders or psychiatric disorders. It could be infants that aren't learning how to roll over because they have something going on, some low tone issue or something going on. It could be children in school that are a little hyperactive and can't settle down, so they might need OT to help them address that deficit. So it really, or you have the kind of work that I do, which is working with an older population in a hospital where there could be a neurological event or a cardiac issue or, hip, they could fall and break their hip or something, and we learn how to help them get back to their life.
So how's it different from rehabilitation?
It is a rehab. It is a form of rehab.
Okay.
Yep. It's like OT, PT, speech, rec. These are all sort of rehab services. It's just like they have a different sort of flavor. Each of them has sort of a different perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say probably an angle how you come into it or how they take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I'm where I'm working now, I rent a studio, and she's an occupational therapist as well. So it's really great.
What kind of population does she work with?
Older people as well. Yeah, mainly older people. A lot of Parkinson's.
Yeah, neurological issues. Yeah, it's really fascinating because you just keep learning. I mean, you learn with yoga too. You learn with everything, right?
Hopefully.
But it's just really nice because like right now I'm studying vestibular issues. I worked with someone for a long time who was having all kinds of dizziness, and I had it myself. So that's what became interested in it. So there's always sort of different ways you can enhance kind of your scope of practice.
Yeah.
And it fits so nicely in with yoga because I'd been doing yoga for so long, and it was such an important
aspect of your life.
To self-regulate, that every time I worked with anyone in the hospital, I thought about healing them with yoga. At least a component of it was through yoga. So it wasn't even like I just merged the two consciously. That's what happened.
Yeah. I read it in your book that when you think of people, you think of yoga. And when you think of yoga,
I can walk into somebody and they're completely bedbound and they can't move at all. And I'm just like, I feel like I have an in on some level with understanding maybe something that could work with them. And I just file through yoga too. That's sort of a part of the toolkit. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. And how do they complement each other, yoga therapy and occupational therapy? How do you find that one helps or bolsters the other?
Occupational therapy, has this functional rehab aspect to it in all these different contexts. And yoga therapy has, sometimes it has like, I want to say like almost like a little bit more of a deeper approach, like a deep approach.
In the body as well?
Maybe, yeah, because yoga goes into really works so well with the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and like if you work on the kosha model at all, which I don't do a lot of, like I don't talk about it a lot or even
You don't
think
need
about it
to.
that much, but it is there. That there are all these different sort of ways of working with the body that you can do a pranayama, you can work on pranayama, you can work on asana, you can work on mindfulness. And so I feel like there's like a scope that allows people to sort of go deeper into, if you work on mudras and, that works with the hands, you can work on chakras to connect,
Yeah.
sort of make sort of a direct sort of physical, psycho-emotional, bio-emotional
Connection.
connection.
Yeah.
And sometimes OT, they're like, raise your arm. Not always, but I mean, OT can get a little rehabby too, where, I sometimes want OT to like pull the yoga in more. So yeah, they're complementary, but I feel like they're different as well.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about your amazing book, Yoga Bones. Tell us about this and why is it called Yoga Bones? Is it mainly for the physical body? And yeah, why is the spine so important?
Oh, those are such great questions.
And I only looked at the first 30 pages.
Um, let's see.
I have a lot more questions.
I mean, with yoga, I always joke to all my people in the hospital, all my patients. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm obsessed with posture and I am sort of obsessed with transfers. And I think that yoga just understands how to develop core strength in a way that traditional therapies don't. I just feel that way. And so I think that's why the spine is really important because I think I'm missing your sound. Am I still? Yes, there we go. Um, and so the spine is super important because if you're not able to learn how to sort of balance your extensors and your flexors and stand up straight, then it's hard to, you have a whole other cascade of issues happen. So the spine is very important. And then what else did you ask?
I asked if Yoga Bones is mainly for the body. It's
Oh, maybe
very
for the body.
physical.
Oh, so one of the ways it came around, sorry, is because
Don't be sorry.
so many people have need therapy, and yet I feel like yoga, I would be like, well, you could do this in yoga for that, and you could do that in yoga for that. Like, you don't need to necessarily spend so long with a physical therapist or so long with an occupational therapist, or you could add this to it, you know? And so I felt like,
Experiment to explore a little.
yeah, which would also get like if you're doing something on your hands and knees and quadruped, it's more of a closed chain action. You're working your core strength. Whereas if you're standing facing a wall, like in, an OT or rehab, and you're walking your arm up and down the wall to work on your shoulder, if you did it in quadruped, closed chain, moving your body over your arm, there's more that's happening in the core, And so in some ways,
Yes, yes.
I was just like, you could get at a lot of similar things if you know what you're doing, but you could get at it through yoga. And with that, there's more core work and there's more mindfulness and more of like a self-managing orientation, like developing self-efficacy, where you're not feeling like, oh, I have to finish my rehab or,
It's not a chore, it's more playful.
yeah, and that you learn more. And then that ties into the OT, which is the function. So if you're home and you've had a shoulder replacement or frozen shoulder and you automatically always use the other arm, right? You use your good arm. It would be really good in yoga to first of all try to do a stretch on the wall or something where you use both arms, but also just go to your cabinet and use your right arm to take, your bad arm. So I wanted to get a sense of like function into the book as well, so people can function in their home environment. And so it was sort of interesting that COVID happened as the book was sort of in its final stages, because I ended up getting a quick chapter about prone breathing in there, because we were through COVID.
Wow.
We're a lot more about how proning and prone breathing is important. And in yoga we do so much supine breathing and sitting breathing, and there's some prone breathing, but not a lot. So I kind of quickly organized that, like I had it 3 weeks or something, so we threw that chapter in there.
Yeah, because your book just came out in January, no?
It came out in January, and so
Wow.
it's just like literally like, this is what we're learning real time. So I threw that in.
Great.
Because that was important too. But it was really about people just being able to manage their own health and their own body, but their own body as a way to function better in their environment and live a happier life. So it is about the body, but it is about the body, working with the body so you can, either manage stress or move out into the world because you have less pain.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than people wanting to go out and wanting to do things and wanting to participate in their life and not being able to because they feel too sad
Limited.
or too limited, or their knee hurts, or they start taking things away from their life
More
and more, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And I just see that once I started seeing that, I was just like, wouldn't it be great if there was a way for people to just address an issue? Like if you have a shoulder issue, you have a knee issue, to just sort of try to figure out how to address it in a way that gives you some
power back.
Yeah, it's power back, some self-control, self-efficacy. And the more you do good things for yourself, the more you feel like you can do good things for yourself. It's like cyclical, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to work at it. It doesn't come easy.
I think that's the biggest thing, is understanding that life is effort, life is work.
Right.
And I just want to say to the audience that Yoga Bones is very practical, and Laura's written it in a language that's so easy to understand. Anyone can get it. So it's not just for professionals in the yoga field or occupational therapists, but it's I think you've written it now for the general public.
Yes, thank you for saying that. It's funny because I wanted to include some anatomy because I think that's really important for people to understand their body. Often people will come in and they'll be like, I had I have herniated discs, or I have a fusion. I'm like, okay, what discs? And they have zero idea. And I think that's common, because
they're not told.
They're not told, or they're told and it's hard to retain information. So I just want people to literally understand what was going on with them. So anatomy was important for me, but anytime you really talk about the origin and the insertion of muscles, it sometimes can get a little scary, a little intimidating. People are like, no way, I'm turning off my...
Of course, it's difficult for the brain, but I think that's why it's good, because you've got those pictures, and you see it. When you see it, you understand it.
Yeah, because every time I started to talk about, I spent a lot of time with the anatomy, because every time I made a goal of not talking about origin or insertion at all. And every time I was starting to get convoluted and technical, I would just go back to function, OT, function. Like, what's my job? Function.
Wow.
What does this muscle do? Function. Why is it important? Function. I think with the psoas, I did do origin and insertion.
You had to.
I had to with the psoas, but I think maybe that's the only one.
Okay.
Because I was like, so thank you for saying that. I worked really hard to try to get it to be sort of just like warm and fuzzy and positive.
Yeah, and it is. And I love the photos. The photos are in different houses, I think, different people.
Yeah.
It's all done at home, so people can just do this at home.
Yeah, Julie's great, because Julie's a dance photographer.
Ah, wow.
Julie's someone that I'd known for 20 years from dancing. She's photographed me dancing and a million other people. She's very extremely talented. And so when I did this book, I was like, I
She's got
sort
to
of
do the
assembled
photos.
the team before even Hachette, we knew Hachette was going to publish it.
Oh, that's
Um,
great.
because I just knew Julie, if you can photograph dance well, you can
Yeah,
photograph it.
yoga
Yeah,
easier.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah.
Okay, great. And can you tell me, so how does this functioning affect mood, mind, emotions? So you touched on it just before with the psychosocial
Uh,
aspects.
I think that's such a good question too. How does functioning affect mood, mind, emotion? I think that people, when they can do things for themselves, they just feel better. And I think, you have people that underfunction, and then you have people, and there's a reason for that. And then you have people that overfunction, and there's a reason for that. And there's sort of a sweet spot in the middle somewhere. Like that's what sort of OT thinks. Like if you do this like Venn diagram or something, right? There's sort of a sweet spot in the middle where you want to be doing what you need to do to take care of your life, like all sort of the ADLs, the self-care, but in the life engagement, your work, your relationships, your friendships, your pets, whatever it is, but also your leisure time and your social interaction and, your health, and there's sort of a sweet spot there. So I think if you underfunction, then that's really hard because I think that you feel it. And then I think if you're overfunction, and I've spent a lot of years overfunctioning, you're also missing some important stuff too. And it's about that also can be an escape and running away. So, how do you find, you know, how do you give yourself space and find how to function to the best of your capacity, and what does that even mean? And I know if there's pain, I do know that if there's pain, and whether it's physical pain or whether it's psychological pain, whether it's emotional pain, and I know we all have pain. You're not going to get away from pain. I mean, I tell
No,
that.
that's part of life too.
But if there's a way to be able um, to like find a way to work with it, I don't even want to say heal it or even manage it necessarily, but if there's a way to sort of work with it, to address it and work with it, then I think there's some degree of functioning that gets calibrated to a way that feels more productive to oneself. Does that make sense? So I just feel like in the book, that's why I wanted there to be also a sort of psychosocial aspect to it too. So it's not just about the hip and the knee and the frozen shoulder, and all of that is extremely important because that's psychological, but also, there's stress, there's anxiety, there's breath, there's our nervous system, there's, we overwork, we feel scattered. How can we calm down? How can you take space for yourself? That I wanted there to be some of that in there as well, because I think that we all go through periods where you're like functioning super well, you're functioning on all cylinders, everything feels great and easy, and then you kind of can fall off a cliff or just be like, what's happening? Why am I not doing these things I used to do? Why am I not engaging with people I used to engage with, or all people like we slip into these patterns,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I know life changes, so patterns change, but sometimes it's good to just address that too and
Yeah.
notice even what's going on. And I think,
Yeah, I think it's like a groove. We create a groove and then we get stuck, and that groove can get too deep. And then,
yes, exactly,
especially if an
exactly.
injury or something, and it just
It
escalates or inverse.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think, and there's so many times where people, like, you can see it from others, right? You can see, like, if you can see, you're like, oh, I think they're going through something, or something you can see it with other people, but you can't always see it with yourself, right? Or if you think about it, you can be like, yeah, I remember when I did that, or I realized, like, even smaller things, that's more psychological, but even smaller things, like I have a bad knee, and my boyfriend really likes to hike. And we went away for the weekend, and a hike for me literally is like
Torture.
taking a little walk in the woods. Like I consider that a hike. walking through the trees because I live in Brooklyn. Like a hike for him is like up, carrying a backpack, and down. And
I love hiking. I can walk for hours and
you
days.
could? Okay, yeah. For me, I'm like, you can walk around the stream in a little with some trees. Like, that was a great hike, honey. But you know what I mean? Like, and the reason that's happening is because I have a bad knee.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So like that for me, if I were paying attention, which I did, I was like, what the heck? You know, I could work on this, and I do work on it because I do work on it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like things happen like that all the time in life where you're realizing you're not doing things because of X. And actually it might be nice to do something. You
Yeah.
know, it might be nice for me to one day take a 5 mile hike up a mountain. I don't know, but right now that's the
You
thing.
never know. Okay. Yeah, and that obviously affects you as well because then you can't connect with your partner and
Yeah, and I'm missing out, you
yeah.
know, and that would be nice. And then I'm just like, then I could get into a whole, you know, my knee is bad, my hip is this, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, and, you know, I could go sort of down a spiral too. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah, you can go downstream or upstream, which was your
right,
first option. Yeah.
right. But if
Yeah.
I could maybe work on it, then I would just not, I would have to, I could avoid some of that sort of self-flagellation and build up my own sort of courage and self-efficacy. So I'm just sort of hoping Yoga Bones can do that for people and also just give them stable information because I went online when I was writing the book because I was getting all of my anatomy from my textbooks from NYU and nothing like I didn't get anything online. Like I was very, very, very mainstream with the muscles and the bones because there's so many different things that people talk
Add.
about the function of the
Yeah.
muscles and add and this and that. So I just wanted to be very, you know, very
Strict.
strict and clear about everything.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I go online and be like, well, what's some yoga therapist saying about this? Or what's somebody saying about that? Or how are people online dealing with this or that? And some of the things were fine. There was a lot of repetitive stuff. Some were kind of boring, and then some, of course, are wrong. And I was like, so this would be hard if you really had no idea. Like if you had no idea what to do with knee pain, zero idea. You couldn't get to a doctor. You couldn't, you know, you can't afford a physical therapist. You're in a part of the country where a doctor, you just know you're not going to organize all of that stuff. Like, is there, you going online is completely confusing and
It's
you don't,
overwhelming.
you don't know what you're going to end up with.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's good for people to be able to just actually have something that's practical and user friendly and they can go right to that chapter and nothing will hurt them. It may not 100% help them, but nothing is going to hurt them. Like it's all of the sequences I practiced on all my students and then tweaked them all and stuff. So
Yes, I read in your book, which I found very, very interesting. Knowing why we do what we do is essential for therapeutic intervention. So, why is it important to explain this to your clients and patients?
well, I feel like if people don't understand what, I guess also when you work in sort of a formal medicine capacity, part of what your job is to always educate, 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 educate. Like you really are not doing a good job if you're not telling somebody why you're having them. If you're sitting there and you're having them do something simple like a bicep curl, which I rarely ever do, but say something because everyone can understand that. If you're not telling them that's to develop their bicep muscle, right? And because they have a weakness and why they're having a weakness, then why are you having them sit and do a bicep curl? They're not understanding it.
Yeah.
And the same with yoga. I'm like, generally with yoga, I'm like, in this pose, you will be working on this. You will be, you know, hopefully maybe be feeling this. You're going to try to feel this. Your body will be doing this. And so you just, it develops a mind-body connection in the brain, right? Because your brain thinks something, it connects motorically to the muscles, the nervous system connect. And so it actually deepens what you're doing. So we know that, and like in yoga is so amazing at that, right? Mindfulness, breath, slowing down, consciousness. You know, if you're just, and that's why if I'm on my bike to strengthen my knee and I'm watching Netflix, which I do. You know what I mean? I do that because it's bike riding. I'm not gonna do my yoga practice like that. I'm gonna do my bike riding like that. I'm like, it's a dumb muscle, but still, if I were not doing that, I'd be getting more out of it. If I were thinking about what I was doing, I'd be getting more out of it.
So you're saying that because you're using different aspects of self, like the mind, the nerves, your awareness, your attention, you're strengthening the muscle as well. Because
Well, no, not quite that. It's just that if you're knowing why you're doing something, so if
Okay.
like sort of visualizing that movement, if you're understanding it, then what you're doing is the brain motor connection is going to be stronger.
Yeah.
Your brain,
Okay, that's what I meant.
like,
But yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's right. Sorry.
So it's a
your
bit
brain,
like when you think, I've read about these studies where people think that they're playing tennis or they're playing piano, but they're not actually doing it, but they still strengthen the muscles in those arms.
exactly.
Yeah, just from the thought of doing it, imagining.
Yeah, and they know that from they have like radiological confirmation of that. They have PET scans, they have different MRIs, they have, different scans and brain tests where they can see different parts of the brain light up so that they know, and that's where like phantom limb pain will come in or something. Your brain does not know that you don't
Your
have
limb is gone.
your limb is gone.
Yeah.
So your brain is still lighting up. Phantom limb pain is completely real and it's fascinating. Or like you have a stroke, and you have left neglect and you can't see anything on your left side. It's your brain. So once you're thinking about something and you're connecting your brain to your movement or your brain to your thoughts or your brain to your behavior, there's just a stronger mind-body connection.
Yeah.
So that's why in the book I needed to explain everything first, and then every single asana is explained as well in the asana.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was very clear. I found it very clear and easy to understand. And it was simple too. It's like I get really excited in my book and I just want to go on and on about certain things because I'm so passionate about it, but it's not serving the person. So you really have to get that stuff out and just get to the point.
I think it depends on your audience, though.
Of course. Of course.
I think it does. Totally
Yeah.
depends on the audience. For this, I knew the audience would be like people that like their grandchildren might buy them a book or something like, Mom, you have to do this, and they're
Okay.
like a 10-minute attention span, or it might be a yoga teacher that's using it to enhance their practice, or it might be a therapist like a OT or a PT who's using it to get a little more yoga. You know what I mean? It's like it sort of depends, but I'm sure that with your book, I didn't even ask you what it was about, so I'm interested.
Don't worry. It's a long story about emotions. And,
okay.
Yeah, working with emotions. So, this is one thing that interested me in your book. You said yoga therapy does not recommend you don't do yoga therapy or any therapy when you see infections or redness of the skin or swelling.
Yeah, that's just a caution. Like
Okay.
we don't want people to, think that yoga is going to cure everything. And that if you feel like you have an infection,
But this is an acute infection, I imagine, no?
yeah, probably, or
Not so much chronic.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Right, not a chronic thing, because if it's
Yeah.
chronic, hopefully you'll be being medicated for it. But I work in Western medicine, so I strongly believe in healthcare, in like a traditional healthcare system. I mean, people's lives are saved every single day, dramatically and beautifully. And so if there's an infection, you need medication.
Yeah.
Yoga's not going to cure it, I don't think.
Okay. And there was one more thing that I wanted to ask that you'd written. Yoga is effective for stress reduction and decreasing blood pressure, in part because it acts on the parasympathetic nervous system by breathing, stretching, and restorative poses. I wanted to know, what are the other parts you think that yoga therapy is effective, or yoga is effective in stress reduction?
You mean besides the parasympathetic?
Yeah.
I think it can bring sort of along the lines of what we were saying. Like, I think even if you're not working on like a restorative yoga practice, it's not like you have to just do yoga to be have a restorative practice. But I think just even physically moving the body, so getting lubrication in the joints and getting oxygen in the blood and the brain, and doing something positive for yourself, right? Like doing your 20-minute practice in the morning, or doing your 3-minute practice in the morning.
Is this also just, for me, I've been studying a lot about hormones. Is that also you're waking up the hormonal system, adrenaline and cortisol in the morning to just get going, no?
Yeah.
And to increase the energy levels and get back into the circadian rhythm.
Yeah. I mean, and anything you do is really helpful. Like the worst thing is to just not do anything, right? So even if it's not yoga, if you're going out and taking a walk, that's really good for you too. But yoga is really helpful because it works so much with the body. It works so much with the joints and with the core support and with stretching and strengthening. Right? Like a healthy yoga practice, you're going to not just stretch, you're not just going to strengthen, you're going to do both. So it really works, and it works from the inside out. It works with the spine. You twist, you rotate, you bend, you extend, you flex, right? It has sort of like, I love that about yoga. It has sort of all the movements that we need to use in our daily life to function well, to balance. Yoga has. So I think that's why yoga for me is a practice that I keep coming back to. I mean, it could be qigong, it could be tai chi, but it's not. For me, it's yoga. You know, I'm sure other things do this too, but for me, it's yoga because yoga has such a deep palette
Yeah.
to it.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. The one thing that I discovered for my own body, I did get imbalances by doing a lot of yoga, and I just want to ask out of personal interest. There's not a lot of pulling unless you're doing Iyengar yoga and you're using belts. In Vinyasa yoga, there's no pulling action. So that was one kind of muscle area that I weakened in a lot. So what would you say is a good practice to do for a pulling action?
Were you doing a lot of chaturangas and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Because it's all pushing, isn't it? There's pushing the
yeah,
down dog and chaturangas.
you know, I think I don't, that's a good question. I mean, I think that it could be that some range of motion, but a lack of stability. So I don't know if
What
I
it
would.
was. That is what it was, but I was just trying to find out ways in yoga that I could start to use those muscles in the opposite direction. So the only thing I could think of was like this pulling action when you're doing Kapalabhati or
Um, I'm going to think about that. I was thinking sort of offhand more like shoulder stability exercises, because it could be that there's just like a little bit of weakness in the rotator cuff muscles, or in the lats or the
the
rhomboid.
serratus anterior.
The serratus is probably like, yeah. So I would think more like developing the strength of the shoulder girdle. The pulling actions might more hit the biceps and the triceps. So I would think of it more
Well,
as
they became weak. I got to the point where the pain was so much or the weakness was
right,
so much that,
right,
like you said, you
right.
just go backwards and you can move less and less, or you're afraid to move.
Yeah,
And
so I
so
would work on the shoulders.
I'm past it now, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious. I went to a physiotherapist
Yeah, what
and
did
she
you,
showed me. Huh?
yeah. Yeah, I would start doing like shoulder stability exercises and exercises for developing the strength in the shoulders. Yeah, and the serratus and things like that. And then, plank, side plank, stuff on your elbows, and then your all kinds of stuff leaning at the wall. Um, so I don't know if I would work specifically on the pulling.
Okay.
Although there is a technique where you work on pushing and you work on pulling, but I think if you get the shoulder stability, then you could start doing that with like Dynabands and stuff like that
Yeah.
to develop some of the strength.
Yeah.
Did PT help?
Yes, because we
Good.
did this Dynabands, and then I would
Yeah.
hold my elbow into my body and just pull
Right,
like
so
this.
those rotator cuff stuff, right? So the
Yeah,
rotator got stretched out and got weakened.
yeah.
You know, sometimes a lot of vinyasa can do that. Like sometimes we can just sort of overstretch and not strengthen enough. So
Exactly.
that when you're younger too, you know, that can happen because you're so flexible.
Yeah.
In yoga, that's probably what happens more in yoga, that there's a little excessive flexibility rather than
And I
strength.
think it attracts flexible people. They
Right.
feel good doing it, and so they overflex.
Yeah, so that's why sometimes you have to really slow down. And again, back to education, like know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So if you're doing a million chaturangas, then you know that's for a certain reason. But
Yeah, that's the groove.
that's yes, back to that. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't have any more questions, but is there something else you'd like to share about your book, about Yoga Bones?
I think that was it. I think we've touched a lot on function. I mean, I just hope that people read it, that people, I would love it if people used it. You know, I'd love it. I have gotten some emails from people and some reviews and stuff where people have really used it and it's helped.
Great.
I'm hoping that people actually, like, it does provide stable information for people to I don't know, you know, to enhance their lives, to just sort of get out there and address things. So that would be great. And also to just sort of have people learn about if they're diagnosed with a you know, disc herniation, what does that mean? What does it look like? You know, because sometimes it's hard, it's just hard to understand these things. So
Which other, maybe you can name that for the audience. Which things do you cover in the book? So frozen shoulder, disc herniation, what else?
I cover
Conditions.
spondylolisthesis and sciatica and a herniated disc, and then we have shoulder, like a frozen shoulder section, a shoulder stabilization, like developing the rotator cuff section. I have a section on knee replacements and hip replacements,
Wow.
section on the hands, a section on the feet and the calves, because it turns out that it's very important to strengthen the anti-gravity muscles. It's a whole other discussion.
What are the anti-gravity muscles?
The anti-gravity muscles is a group of 6 muscles, and those are mostly your extensor muscles.
Okay.
And so yoga is really good. So that means the cervical extensor muscles, the back extensor muscles, so the muscles that help you extend your spine backwards, not the flexors, the abdominals that pull you forward, the gluteals, and the calves.
So the whole back body, pretty much.
Back body, and then the only ones in the front are the quadriceps, and the quadriceps
Oh.
actually extend the knee.
Yeah.
So, you know, and those are the ones, you know, that quadriceps that have to get up and walk and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the calves are really more important than we think. Like I was getting so sort of, I don't know, burnt out writing the book, speaking of balance, that I was
It's
like,
very hard. It's almost impossible.
you know, it's for balance people. Balance is a goal. That, you know, that I was, for a while, I was like, you know, maybe I won't write about the hands and the feet. You know, maybe I'll just leave those out. Chef had a huge demand. Maybe I'll just not do them. And
You
then
just get sick of the book, don't you?
I was like, enough is enough. And I was like, you know, let's get a grip here. Let me just like take a deep breath, find my homeostasis, get a grip, give myself a little talking to, because, you know, the hands and the feet are all about locomotion and function, right? And I was just like, if you can't eat and you can't pick things up and you were talking about a weak shoulder and how distressing that is, right? And so it's just like, I really can't not do the hands and the feet. And then as I was researching the feet and started thinking about the calf muscles more, I really discovered how important the calf muscles are, because they're postural muscles. Is that not weird? The calf muscles are important for posture.
Well, they're big and strong. I can imagine they kind of pull you back a little.
Yeah, it's not, they work with the hamstrings. It's not just like running and, you know, dancing. So, so anyway, so the calf muscles are really important too. So Yeah, the anti-gravity muscles.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
really
Yeah. So it's a very in-depth book. Yeah.
usable, hopefully.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I learned a
You
lot writing
address
it too.
everything.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of pictures. It's a very spaceful book. Like there's a lot of space between pages, so it doesn't feel overwhelming at all.
right. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
So thank you for this talk. Thank you for sharing. And do you want to leave us with the practice?
It's funny. You know what I was thinking? I was going to do a breath practice, but we talked about that. But I have done a couple book events, and
Uh-huh.
one of the most recent book events that I did, my two friends that I was doing it with, Alexis and Michelle. Michelle's one of my students, and Alexis is like a book person. They were helping me kind of plan it, and we're doing another one soon too.
Great.
And I think it was maybe Alexis's idea. It was one of them, maybe Michelle's. It was one of their ideas. It wasn't my idea. They were like, why don't we do something? Because everyone's sitting all the time. This was before any restrictions were lifted, and we were like in the middle of COVID. It was several months ago, not in the middle, but several months ago when everything was still locked down, at least here in New York.
Uh-huh.
So I could demonstrate that because it's still an issue. We've still been sitting for a year. Everyone's life has really changed, become more
More
sedentary,
sedentary.
I would
Yeah.
say. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
safe to say that. So I can try to kind of describe, and it's very easy. You can do it with a chair, like nothing fancy. You can always do heel raises back to the anti-gravity muscles and the calf muscles. Um, but what I guess we should try to do, and I'm sorry, people at home, if I don't explain this well, I'm going to try. But you could go ahead and take a chair, and I would say lean it up against a wall. Okay, so or a table or something. Lean it up against something so you don't have to worry about it moving. You can hear I'm moving my chair now. And then what I'm going to do is, here, I have to stand in front of you. And then what I'm going to do is just stand, I would say, about 2 feet away from it. So maybe 2 feet, not super far, 2 feet away from it. And put your feet together. And maybe just start with your hands on your hips. And let's try to lift the abdomen up away from the pubic bone. And draw the buttock muscles down towards the heels. And, see if you can straighten your knees. And maybe the outer hips can kind of move down towards the outer ankles. And let's place the hands on the hips and lift and open the chest. So it's a little bit like a Tadasana, right? We're just trying to stand up, lift the chest, and try to have the crown of the head lifting up towards the ceiling. So we're just kind of starting in like a nice neutral place. Your extensors are working. And now let's just go ahead and take a breath. And often with people with tight hip flexors, it's hard to even stand up straight because hip flexors are pulling your pelvis into an anterior tilt. So I'd like you to just see if you can pick up your right foot. And if you're imbalanced at all, hold on to the wall with your left hand or hold on to something with the other. Pick up your right foot and put your right foot in the center of the chair. Yep, just right in the chair. With your knee bent. Sorry, just foot. Yep, that's it. Right. Okay. So now it's kind of like a modified lunge, right? So hopefully you're on a chair, not a stool. So lean forward, just bend that right knee. That's it. Oh, I love that you're doing it so I can watch you. Okay. Lean forward, place your hands on the back of the chair. There you go. Good. And if you need to be closer or farther away, you need to adjust. Now you go. Now I was gonna say you guys as if it's a class. Keep bending that knee. And then keep that left hip, because your left leg is behind you, rolling forward. So you really feel, you could even sort of pigeon toe that back foot a little bit if you want. So you really feel a stretch in the front of that left hip. Do you feel that? You also may feel a stretch in the left calf. So that's not a bad thing to feel either. And let's go ahead and relax the shoulders. Now, if you want to push yourself up a little bit and get your back heel on the floor, you might even want to lift your arms up. See if you can do that. Just lift your arms up. So now we have some breath in there. You're lifting your rib cage. Try to laterally expand the lower ribs so we're not just breathing up into the upper muscles. Inhale and exhale. Good. And then you can just put your hand back on the chair. And then just straighten your right leg. Oh yeah, you can even straighten your leg. That's nice. Actually, what you're doing, as Shira, is you're even just straightening that right leg and going in sort of a modified dog pose with your hands in the back of the chair. So she just added that people at home, but that's good. And then you can just bring that other foot down. And then you see how you can just stand for a minute, and then you see how that left hip is longer, right? Do you feel how you feel that your left hip is longer? Now your left calf is longer. So we could do it on the other side for people. Okay, so stand up straight, breathe, open your chest. Good. Now press your right foot into the floor, just like a little pulley, lift up your left knee, and just place your left foot right in the center of the chair. Okay. Now keep your right heel on the floor and just bend your left knee. Bend your left knee. So your pelvis moves and shifts towards the chair. So this we did for our book signing event because people could just get up from, at home and do it. So it was kind of something that Zoom specific. Or Zoom attached to Zoom and COVID. Okay, so then you want to draw the heel down. Yep, put your hands in the back of the chair, and then you want to kind of press your left foot into the chair. I think I forgot that on the other side. And then draw your right hip around, and then just let your sacrum move forward. That's right. So you're just breathing and stretching through. You can, again, pigeon toe that back foot just a little bit because it will get the psoas a little stronger. Yeah, get the stretch a little stronger. Good. And then if you want to lift your arms up, I would just back your weight up a little bit. So the heel is on the floor and lift the arms up. Lift the chest. So if you did this, I would say, a couple times a day or after you're sitting for 2 hours, it would really counteract the effects of too much sitting. Yeah. Because too much sitting is really not helpful for our body, for our neck, for our upper back, and also for the psoas. Yes, the upper back. Yes, dramatically. Good. Lift the head up, lift the chin up. Good. And then you can just do Shira's beautiful adaptation and addition. You can just straighten both legs, stretch forward, hold on to the back of the chair. Do a little hamstring stretch at the left leg. Breathe. And then release the chair, bend your knee, and come up to standing. So that's just like 2 seconds, but hopefully even that's a perfect example of something that somebody could do at home to change their mental weather, right? To change their mental weather and to build a little self-efficacy. Because you're like, oh, okay, now I can get back to work. So
Yeah.
Even like something like that is helpful. That I feel like really that's maybe the take home, how little it takes for people to
change,
to recalibrate.
Yeah.
And people get so disappointed in themselves because they can't stick to an exercise regime or they can't do their 5-mile walk a day. And it's like, oh my God.
Nor can I.
You're so good.
Yeah. I also ask people when they come for yoga therapy, how much time have you got? And they always try to be very what do you call that? They exaggerate with their time. They say, oh, half an hour, 40 minutes. I'm like, no, let's be real. Make it 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that you can do it, because otherwise you won't do it and you'll feel guilty and that'll just make you feel worse.
Right. I'm so glad we're talking about this, and I know we have to go, but the last thing is that the last thing I would want is for yoga bones to make people feel guilty. So you could literally do one thing in a chapter and then flip to another chapter and do whatever your body wants to. Because I used to do privates, and then I would take iPhones are great, right? In the past 10 years. So I would take photos and give them a little routine, like a little 10 asana routine, because that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
And then I would say, how did it go? And they'd be like, well, and I'd be like, okay, so I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to give you 2 things.
Yeah. Make it really easy.
And I think it's just to develop one's self-efficacy. I hate to keep using that word.
No, but it's important.
And engagement, you have to start small. So even that little thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I feel great because I'm sitting way too much the last year with the book, and it's just doing this. I even felt I've got my periods coming, so I felt the lymphs here in the groin getting a bit sore today.
Oh, cool.
And now it's gone. It's like drainage of the lymphs.
Oh, right. It's like magic.
Simple.
I just wish people could just do a little bit. Just do a little bit.
Yeah.
Those are parting words. Just do something.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll feel so much better. Hey, Laura, this is so much fun. Thank
you for inviting me. And I can't wait to read your book.
Okay.
Does it have a name yet?
Does it? Well, I would like to call it Reclaim Your Wellbeing.
Yeah.
But that was too broad for the publisher who's interested, so we shall see. Maybe I do self-publishing. But I wanted to ask for the audience, how can they find you? How can they find your book? Do you want to leave any?
How can I mean, let's see. We just got a publishing deal in France.
Oh, wow.
We'll be in Europe, I guess, in about a year.
Oh, wow. Great.
I think we order on Amazon, but we don't want to promote Amazon. So, so I guess is there bookshop.org or something? I mean, there's a lot of online, you could even, Hachette, you can order it from Hachette as well.
Okay.
But I think a lot of local bookstores may have it, but I'm not sure in Europe. I think my friend in Europe, who's on the cover, Eve Holbrook. Eve Holbrook, she's in Copenhagen.
Okay.
Great Angar teacher. She's on the cover. Anyway, I think maybe she got it on Amazon, but people in Europe have gotten it.
Okay.
But it's in a lot of major bookstores, like, Barnes and Nobles and Powell's and things like that. It's in major bookstores.
Okay. Anything else you want to leave people with?
If on my Instagram, I just started sort of doing Instagram, but I've started right? The hiking and the Instagram.
I tried it. I was like, no way. I'm not getting lost in that world.
I know. My son's girlfriend really helps a lot. But I just wanted to say, not to promote my Instagram, but the thing that I'm doing on my Instagram, because really it's not a big deal, but the thing I'm doing on my Instagram is I have a whole transfer series. And so I find that the way people do things at home, like when I see them privately, like even getting in and out of bed or transferring, even like yoga therapists that are working with someone or yoga teacher who's working in a wheelchair, they don't know how to transfer them out of the wheelchair. So
it's very important.
How to even get up from a chair. So it's just like, okay, this is making me crazy. Like, people should know how to get up from a chair. So, because those are one of the daily activities that you lose.
Yeah, and then you're stuck.
So I'm doing a whole little transfer series, and each one, again, is bite-sized. It's like under 2 minutes. It's not like this big, long, I sort of rush through them, but I think that they're comprehensive enough. So I think for anyone that's having mobility issues or know people that have mobility issues, then I think, like, if you just had back surgery and it's really hard to get in and out of bed, and people develop all kinds of very bizarre strategies for all kinds of transfers. So in therapy, it's functional mobility. So then, anyway, I think that might be helpful for people too.
Okay. I'll leave it all in the show notes if you send it to me.
All right. I will. Yeah. I'll send it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Shira. This was so pleasant.
Yes. It's lovely to talk.
And just looking at you and hearing your voice is really charming. And
and you too. I've had it felt very good. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the book, and
okay.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you to those who listened. You too. Okay.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye. So thank you everyone for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I really love doing these talks with these amazing people. And if you want to know more, just take a look in the show notes. There's plenty of links and ways to connect with either the guest or myself. If you want to work with us or find out more about us, just check out the information in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and you'll be hearing from me next week.